This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Haba. We continue in the Chaim of the Rosh. We're learning what is called Madura Beis, or what is designated Liyom HaShabbos, and we are up to Ois Ches. Sheyechabed loimdei Torah b'chol yecholtai, that you should honor those who learn Torah with all your ability, which means as follows. The Rosh is not just saying to honor Talmidei Chachamim, but one should honor even loimdei Torah, even if they're not Talmidei Chachamim. Reb Chaim Kanievsky cites a source for this from the Tanchuma and Bereshis, Siman Aleph, Ki mechabdei achabed. This refers to one who is mechabed b'nei Torah. What I will honor those who honor me. What does it mean, someone who honors me? Someone who's mechabed b'nei Torah. We learned in a brayso, Hashem aleikecha tira l'rabbois b'nei Torah. So from here we see, even someone who does not have a din of a Talmid Chacham, even if they're just a ben Torah, you also have to honor them. And Rav Goldberg says that he heard from his father-in-law a Ma'aseh Nifla that happened in Lita. There was a house, that in this house, the child of the house was sitting at the head of the table and the father was sitting on the side. And when he was asked that, he said, well, my son learns in yeshiva, he's a ben Torah, I have to honor him. Tes, to reprimand your friend and not have to bear sin, which Rashi says means reprimand your friend but don't embarrass him. However, Targum says reprimand your friend and don't take this way you don't have to bear responsibility for his fault, meaning you don't have to be mekabel oynish for his wrongdoing, because if your friend sins and you don't reprimand him, you're going to be punished for his crime. Yud, sheyadin es chaver lekavschos. They should judge your friend favorably. You should judge your friend favorably. This comes from the pasuk in Vayikra, Parak Yutes, pasuk Tesvav, the tzedek tishbar amisecha. Rashi says, judge your friend lekavschos. The Gemara in Shabbos says, hadonas chaver lekavschos, are from the matters that a person eats from the fruits in Olam Hazeh. Now, it's very interesting. Rabbeinu Yoina in the Shari Tshuva says that someone who's a God-fearing person, you're obligated to judge him favorably, even if it's more likely he did something wrong. If he's an average person, then you should judge him favorably. Like the Gemara in Shabbos says, Adanas chaver l'kavschos, hamakim b'nei l'kavschos, and it's mitzvah saseh. And if it's noite l'kav choiva, so then it should be a suffix by you. Now the Chafetz Chaim writes that by a regular person, even if it seems it's noite l'kav choiva, this that you should judge him favorably, it's only a midah toiva, it's not me'ikar adin. Because Rabbeinu Yonah says, when the matter is shakol, it's a mitzvah saseh. That implies if it's noite l'kav choiva, that's not the mitzvah. Now we come to something very interesting. Namely, Ois Yud Aleph, sheyimcha b'chol layla koydem sheyolen. You should be mochel every night before you go to sleep. L'chol mi shechat olay b'dvarim, to anyone who sinned against you with words. Every night before you go to sleep, you should be mochel anyone who sinned against you. Now the source of this is the Gemara Megillah Daf Chav Ches. The students from Nechunya ben Akana asked him, why do you live so long? He said, I never allowed myself to go to sleep with ill feelings against my friend. Like Mar Zutra, when he would go to sleep, he would say, God should forgive anyone who pained me. That the Marsha would say, the whole day he would wait that his friend should be mefayis him. And regarding this, David HaMelech said, Ad mechevoidi l'chlima. They embarrassed me the whole day, but in the end of the day, b'shalom yachtav eshkava v'ishan, I am mochel them before I go to sleep. And the Mishnah Berurah brings that the Sfarim write that at night before you go to sleep, you should search your ways and you should be mochel anyone who sinned against you, and in this zechus, you'll be marach yamim. And that's what's published in our Sidurim, in the Kriya Shema Alamita. Ribono shel olam, harini mochel l'chol mi shehichas v'hikner oisi. Oy shachat kenegdi, bein begufi, bein b'mamoini, bein b'chvoidi, bein b'chal asherli, bein b'gilgul zeh, bein b'gilgul acher, v'lo ye'anei shamadam b'sibasi. So it seems like, before you go to sleep at night, forgive anybody who may have wronged you. Now you can ask on this, from the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis, Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Shimon Yoed Tzadok, any Talmid Chacham that is not vengeful and any Talmid Chacham that doesn't bear a grudge is not a Talmid Chacham? So the Gemara says, well, that's if someone steals from you. But if someone causes you pain, a Talmid Chacham should be Mochel. The Gemara says, really? Now, just the opposite. If someone hurts you monetarily, you should forgive them. But if someone causes you physical pain, a Talmid Chacham should not forgive them. So the Gemara says, well, you don't hurt them back, but you bear a grudge in your heart. So the Gemara says, but Rava said anyone who's mavar on their midas, then they remove your sin. That's only if the person asks you for forgiveness. Which implies so long as someone did not ask you for forgiveness, it's asur for Talmid Chacham to be Mochel Tzara de Gufa. So how could the Rosh just say you have to be Mochel every night? That sounds like even a Talmid Chacham, but if somebody hurts a Talmid Chacham begufa and he doesn't ask for mechila, you're not to forgive them. And furthermore, you could ask from many stories in Shas that Talmid Chacham were makbid and they were not Mochel their Talmidim that night. So it seems like tsar de gufa, if the person doesn't ask for mechila, Talmid Chacham should not forgive them. So if Goldberg says that if you look in the Rambam, at the end of the 7th parak of Hilchos Talmud Torah, the Rambam says, even though a Chacham could put someone in cherem, it's not admirable, it's not a praise for him, but it's better not to pay attention to everything that people say against the Talmid Chacham. And the derech of Talmid Chacham is shoymin cherpasam einam mashivan, and they're mochel those who embarrass them. And the Chachamim would praise themselves that they never put someone into cherem, and that's the way of Talmid Chachamim. Says the Rambam, that's when they do it b'seiser. But Talmid Chacham that they embarrassed publicly, you're not allowed to be mochel. And if you're mochel, you're punished, because it's a bizayin for the Torah. But rather you should bear a grudge until they ask for mechila. Now in the Kesef Mishnah, it's mashma that the Rambam's bothered that from the Gemara Megillah it's mashma that you need to be mochel even though they don't console you, and in Yuma it's mashma that the Talmid Chacham has to bear a grudge, and therefore the Rambam is answering that it depends if it's private or public. So according to this, says Rav Goldberg, if a Talmid Chacham was embarrassed publicly, he should not be mochel. And when you say every night, Harini mochel l'chol mi shechichas v'kenegdi, it's not talking about. It's talking about someone who embarrassed. It's not talking about if you're embarrassed publicly. If someone who's embarrassed publicly, they should not be forgiving. Again, this is for a Talmid Chacham, because they have to stand up for the Kavod Torah. Rav Goldberg wants to know whether a Talmid Chacham could be mochel after the offender dies. Because the Rambam says, until the person asks for mechila. That implies if they're alive and they could ask for mechila, you're not to just be mochel them. But if the person died and they didn't ask for mechila, you could be mochel them, because you don't want the person to be punished on your account, because there's no bizana Torah, because he can't ask you for mechila. And if the person is punished because of you, it's not going to be good for you. Because we know anyone who's punished on the account of someone else, so it comes out, when a person is mochel every night, he could be mechaven, even if someone embarrassed them publicly, that you're mochel them on any personal insult, if it's not nogea kavod Torah, and if the person is not mefayis you, you're mochel your part, because you don't want someone to be punished. So the bottom line is, it seems like a person who's a Talmid Chacham does not have to be mochel a public insult. However, if the person asks for mechila, it sounds like you should be mochel. And if the person does not ask for mechila and they pass away, then it sounds like there might be room to mochel them as well. Okay, Bez Hashem, we'll continue in Ois Yud Beis. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a wonderful day. Bracha v'hatzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.